These are the notes for 3.7, identifying graphs from y equals mx plus b. So we're actually still going to be practicing what we worked on in unit 3.6, where we're graphing when it's in the form of y equals mx plus b. What I wanted to do first is go over just basically the formula with you and talk about a few things, highlight a few important pieces of information. And the first thing I'm going to do, and we've already kind of talked about this, is I'm going to talk about the okay? The M, all right? And the M just happens to be the slope. Notice it's slope-intercept form. And I always square slope, as you guys remember. So let's talk about what is slope. I think the easiest way to describe slope is that it is how we move. It is how we move on the graph, how we move, that lowercase m. That is what our slope is, okay? The other thing that's important to remember, and we did already talk about this, is that it is always, and we don't have a lot of always in life, but it is always in front of x. Always. Even if the x is written at the end of the equation, it is always in front of x. When we have a number in front of a letter, it's actually the correct term, or the technical term is it is the coefficient, all of a sudden I couldn't spell that, of x. So that means it's the number in front of that variable. Okay? The other thing I want to point out about slope is this is our Kyle piece. Kyle is how we move on our graph. Is his bank account going up? Is it going down? What is happening with it? And the way we also represent that is that it's y over x. So it's y over x, which we call that the rise over the run. So, of course, you guys can pause the notes at any time to fill some of this information out. It's a lot of information, but it's also very, very important, and it is critical to graphing. Now, let's go look at the B of the equation. So, what form is this? This is slope-intercept. So, what does the B represent? The B is going to represent our y-intercept. Okay, this is our y-intercept. Now, it's important that you do note that it is the y-intercept. And what that means is it is where it crosses, this is where the graph, the line, crosses the y-axis. And the y-axis is the up and down axis. I always make you guys hold up your arm, tell me which axis. Okay, a point for it, let's talk about a point. A point is x comma y, so sideways, then up and down. So a point would always be 0 comma b, because it is our y value. So whatever your b value is. And notice I circled the operation in front of it, because that includes it. If it's a negative, that means it's a minus, and we start on the lower part. And the b is where we begin on the y-axis. It's where we begin our graph. It's always the first thing I look for when I use the equation, because it's easy. And something that it is always, okay, in the slope-intercept form, it is always the number by itself. So it's never going to be next to a variable when it's in y equals mx plus b form. It's always going to be a number. A lot of information there, so pause as needed. So all of your examples today are going to be similar to this. You are just going to be lining them up. You're going to be viewing them on the screen and answering on It's Learning. So your assignment is actually on It's Learning today. And you're going to just go answer these in It's Learning, but I gave you guys a place to put, to do your work. So you'll notice it's giving you guys the graphs. Y'all aren't actually going to have to physically graph. You're going to have to interpret the equation is what you guys are going to have to do. So over here we have y equals x minus 8. So I'm going to write it a little bit bigger up here. Okay, this is the equation we're looking at. And as I told y'all, I always look first at the y-intercept, and I always circle it. The y-intercept is always the number by itself. That is your b value. That is where we begin on the axis. So what I do first is I always look for that first, and I always go and I interpret it. So I'm going to see, where do I cross at -8 on my graphs? Okay, that one's out, doesn't cross at -8. That one's out, doesn't cross at -8, and that one does. So then you're going to go and you're going to look at the slope. And as you recall, slope is always the number. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. What would be the number in front of x here? Well, it is a 1, okay? So how does that mean Kyle moves? It means he goes up 1, and every whole number is over a 1, so he goes over 1. So when I look at this one, you do not go up or over 1, so that one's out. You can also look at these and just say that this is a negative graph, this is a positive graph, this is a negative graph, and this is positive, and that pretty much does it. So there's two things you can look at. You can actually look at and count the slope, like up 1, over 1, okay, this is it. Or you can just look at the fact that it's a positive versus a negative graph. So there's several things you guys can look at. So this is what you're going to be doing on your assignment. Let's go look at our next example. Okay. I'm going to switch back to my blue pen because I'm doing my y-intercepts in blue. All right. So here's my equation, and I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it so it's a little bit bigger up here. And I'm going to start at B. B is where I begin on the y-axis, the up and down. So I'm going to look right here for negative 1s. So there's a negative 1. There's a negative 1. There is not a negative 1, so it's out. And there's not a negative 1. To me, that's the easiest thing to look for when you're graphing or when you're writing or when you're just pulling the numbers out of the equation, is I always look for that B first because it is where we begin, okay? It's where we begin. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at the slope, and I'm going to do that one in pink so that it's color coordinated, so color coded for you. And there is my B, and luckily it gave me an equation so we don't have to interpret anything. Now, when you look at this, remember it's rise over run. So a negative would mean that you go down, and then you're going to go to the right 3. Sometimes we can't fit that on a graph, and we have to reverse both arrows, but we're going to go look on this one. So I can look at this one and see clearly that it goes down 1 over 3. So that should be my graph, but I'm going to go double check. This one doesn't go down because if you notice, guys, this is a positive graph. So if you look at that, it's a positive graph, you're automatically going to eliminate that one. Okay, so some kiddos look at it different. Some look at it and say, these are positive graphs, I'm taking them out. Because if you notice that this was a negative slope, you would have taken this one out without even looking at the y-intercept because it's positive, it's going up. So there's a bunch of different things you guys can look at. Third example is a little different. On the third example, we have y equals -1, and that's it. No mx. Kind of just like a b because it's in y equals. So what this says is y equals, and I'm going to go get a different color that's a little bit brighter for you guys to notice. And what we're looking at here is y equals -1. So first of all, I'm going to think of, okay, the y-axis is the up and down axis, and it equals -1. So there's nothing there, that one's out. There's nothing there, that one's out. Y equals -1. There's nothing there, that one's out. That's the only one that has y equals -1. And we've actually talked about this a lot. Y equals a number is a straight horizontal line that crosses the y-axis. It's a zero slope because it means no matter what you do, y will equal, no matter what you plug in, y will equal -1. So if you plug in a 4, y is -1. If you plug in a -6, y is -1, no matter what. So B would be your answer on that one. You will then go to your activity. So here is your activity. Okay, I have a pre-recorded video lesson for the first set of notes we did, and I'll put this set in here as well. And the following is to work if you needed, so you're going to want to work it on here probably, and then go answer it in It's Learning, okay? So when you go over here, and these are exactly like this in It's Learning, you are simply going to interpret on the graph. You're going to look at your y-intercept, which is where you begin. And you're going to look at your slope. And that's how you move. So you look at those two pieces of information. I always look at the y-intercept first, because to me, the easiest thing is to just go look and say, hey, is it at -2? Is it at -2? And that's all you're looking at. So you can know if you do or don't, or if you can easily eliminate a graph. Sorry.